On a cold winter afternoon, Barron Trump, who has always lived in the limelight, unexpectedly encounters a bitter man at the community centre. The confrontation between two seemingly irreconcilable worlds leads to an ending that leaves everyone astonished. Why did Barron decide to delve deeply into the story of this unfamiliar family? And what unexpected lesson does his action leave for all of us? Watch the video until the end, as you'll be surprised. A cold winter afternoon, with snow lightly dusting the old brick-paved streets of Brooklyn, Barron Trump, clad in a thick black coat, steps out of an SUV parked across the street. Adjusting his wool beanie and face mask, he conceals his tall yet recognizable face. Today, he wants to visit the community center incognito to observe the lives of the people here in the most authentic way possible. The slightly ajar door of the center creaks softly as Barron pushes it open. A wave of warmth rushes out, carrying the scent of food and the laughter of children. Inside are long tables filled with trays of hot meals, racks of donated clothes, and a small area where people line up to receive supplies. The scene is both bustling and chaotic. Barron steps in, trying to blend into the crowd, but his towering height draws a few curious glances. Walking carefully, Barron observes the faces around him. A young woman soothing a crying baby, an elderly man sitting in a corner with a distant gaze, a few children eagerly eyeing the steaming trays of food. It all feels like fragments of a painting full of contrast, poverty, yet not devoid of humanity. As he takes it all in, his eyes suddenly stop at a middle-aged man. The man stands beside an old wooden chair, his gaunt face and frail frame fumbling for something in the pockets of his tattered coat. His eyes reflect exhaustion but also a hint of panic. Barron moves closer, noticing a worn-out wallet lying at the man's feet. "Did you drop something, sir?" Barron asks, his voice gentle yet loud enough to make the man look up. A flicker of hope crosses the man's eyes. "Did you find my wallet?" he asks, his voice hoarse. "Yes, is this your wallet?" Barron picks it up and hands it to him. The man quickly snatches it, meticulously checking every pocket. Inside are a few crumpled bills, an ID card, and a small scrap of paper with scribbled words. He exhales in relief, but upon looking up at Barron, his expression shifts. His voice suddenly turns sharp. "Thank you. But you don't look like someone who would come to a community center. Who are you?" Barron looks slightly taken aback by the abrupt question. "I'm just here to see what people might need," he replies, trying to keep his tone calm. The man smirks, his eyes scanning Barron from head to toe. "To see what people need. Let me guess. You're some rich kids stopping by to pity us poor folks. Am I right?" The man's bitter words ring loud and clear amidst the noisy room, drawing the attention of a few nearby. The atmosphere suddenly grows heavy. Barron remains still, his eyes steady, but his expression turns more serious. "No," Barron replies, his voice deep and firm. "I didn't come here to pity anyone. I just believe everyone deserves help when they need it." The man chuckles dryly, his eyes still filled with skepticism. "Help? You have no idea what we need. People like you, born with everything handed to you. How could you possibly understand suffering? Money, power, you've never had to worry about that, have you?" Barron remains silent for a few moments, as if carefully considering his words. Then he speaks slowly, his tone calm but resolute. "I don't know all the struggles people face, but that doesn't mean I can't try to understand." The man, whose name is Henry, stares at Barron, seemingly caught off guard by the response. Yet his anger still simmers beneath the surface. "And how exactly do you plan to understand?" "By stopping by once, tossing a few dollars, and going back to your fancy mansion." Barron looks directly into his eyes, unflinching. "No, Mr. Henry. By being here, listening and doing what I can. If I don't understand everything, I'll learn." Hearing his name mentioned startles Henry. "How do you know my name?" he asks, his tone wary. Barron gestures toward the wallet. "Your Idaho card. I didn't mean to invade your privacy, but I thought it was the first thing to know when trying to help someone." Henry falls silent, seemingly unsure of how to respond. His gaze softens slightly, though a trace of doubt lingers. "Well, if you really want to help, I'll see what you can do." Barron doesn't reply immediately. He offers a faint smile, but his eyes remain determined. I will. But first, could you tell me about your son? The question makes Henry freeze. The defensive walls he had built seemed to crumble piece by piece. He sighs deeply, slumping into a nearby chair, his frail shoulders drooping. You really want to hear? I really want to hear, Barron replies, sitting across from him, his gaze unwavering from the weathered face of the man. The air in the room seemed to freeze, tension tightening like a string that could snap at the slightest touch. A few people standing nearby began whispering to each other, their eyes fixed on the two figures in the middle of the room. Barron Trump, the tall, calm young man, faced Henry Phillips, a middle-aged man filled with bitterness and exhaustion. You're right, Barron began, his voice steady and resolute. I was born into a wealthy family. I've never had to worry about where my next meal would come from or how to pay medical bills. But that doesn't mean I don't care. Henry let out a dry laugh, the sound laced with sarcasm as it echoed in the otherwise quiet space. Care? He emphasized the word as if it were a luxury too distant to grasp. How long can you care? A day? 2 days? Then you'll go back to your luxurious mansion and forget everything you've seen here. We don't need empty words. Barron didn't argue immediately. He stood still, meeting Henry's gaze without flinching. A brief silence followed, heavy enough for everyone around to feel something significant brewing. He took a deep breath and then asked unexpectedly, Where is your son? Henry froze, clearly not anticipating such a question. He stared at Barron for a long moment, his eyes flashing with caution and a hint of anger. Why are you asking that? Barron maintained his calm tone. I want to know so I can better understand, to see if there's anything I can do to help. Henry frowned, his brows knitting together, but after a long, heavy sigh he spoke. He's in the hospital. He needs heart surgery. But the money I have is just a drop in the ocean. Barron listened, his expression remaining unchanged, though his eyes reflected deep empathy. He stayed silent for a moment, as if weighing his next words carefully. Then he said with quiet determination, I want to meet him. Henry was taken aback, his eyes narrowing in disbelief. Meet him? For what? So you can play the hero? Or to prove how much you care? His voice dripped with sarcasm. Barron didn't react to the bitterness. He looked directly at Henry, his gaze steady but free of arrogance. Not to play the hero, he replied, but to better understand how I can help. If you don't want me to, I won't intrude. Henry studied Barron closely, as if trying to uncover some hidden motive behind the young man's words. After a few moments, he shrugged with an air of indifference. Fine, if you want to waste your time. Henry and Barron left the community centre, walking down a snow-covered street. Barron remained silent, while Henry kept glancing at him from the corner of his eye. After a while, Henry couldn't hold back and broke the silence. You don't have to do this. You know that, don't you? I know, Barron replied without hesitation, but I want to. Why? Henry challenged, his tone skeptical. Do you think helping me will make you feel better? Or is this part of some PR campaign? Barron stopped walking and turned to face Henry. Snowflakes gently fell on his shoulders, but his eyes were sharp and unwavering. Not everyone does things for personal gain, Mr. Henry, he said, his tone calm but firm. Sometimes people help simply because they can, and if you want to think otherwise, I won't hold it against you. Henry fell silent, unaccustomed to being confronted so directly, especially by someone so young. Yet, deep within him, a strange feeling began to stir. Perhaps this young man wasn't what he had assumed. When they arrived at the hospital, Henry led Barron down a long corridor filled with the sharp scent of antiseptics. Stopping in front of a wooden door, Henry took a deep breath before pushing it open. Inside, a boy of about 7 years old, thin and pale, lay in a hospital bed. IV tubes connected his frail arms to machines that beeped rhythmically. Dad, you're back. Timmy's weak but joyful voice greeted Henry, his eyes lighting up like small lanterns in the quiet room. Henry walked over to the bed, taking his son's small hand in his own. I'm here, Timmy. I promised to find a way to help you, and I will. Timmy nodded gently, but his gaze shifted to Barron, who stood tall and slightly hesitant in the doorway. Dad, who's that? Timmy asked. Henry turned back, pausing momentarily. "This is Barron. He wanted to meet you." Barron stepped forward, lowering himself to Timmy's eye level. "Hi, Timmy! I'm Barron! I heard you're really strong. Is that true?" Timmy nodded and managed a faint smile. "People say so, but sometimes I feel really tired." Barron smiled back, placing a hand on Timmy's shoulder. "I understand, but I believe you're a true warrior, Timmy, and warriors never fight alone, right?" Timmy looked at Barron, his eyes seeming to brighten. "Right, warriors always have teammates." "Then from now on, I'll be one of your teammates," Barron said, his voice warm yet resolute. "I'll do everything I can to help you win this battle." Henry stood silently by, watching Barron with a mixture of discomfort and doubt. In all the months of despair, he had never seen anyone speak to Timmy like this with encouragement, not pity. Timmy stared at Barron, as if trying to grasp the meaning of his words. "Teammates? You mean like my mom and my sister?" Barron nodded with a smile. "Exactly. And now you have me too. I'll do whatever it takes to help you get better." Henry, sitting nearby, couldn't hold back his skepticism. "It's easy to say things like that, but I need money. Words won't save my son," he said coldly. Barron didn't flinch at Henry's anger. Instead, he turned to him, his gaze calm yet firm. "You're right. Words won't save him, but actions can." Henry raised an eyebrow, about to respond, but before he could, Barron pulled out his phone. He quickly typed out a message to his assistant, "Brooklyn Hospital, cover all medical expenses for Timmy Phillips. Keep my identity anonymous." Henry froze as he watched Barron send the message. Leaning closer, he asked skeptically, "What did you just do? Don't tell me you think one text will solve everything." Barron slipped his phone back into his pocket and turned to Henry. "I don't think. I know. And I'm not doing this to prove anything. I just want to make sure Timmy Asher has a fair chance to fight." Henry stared at Barron, disbelief etched on his face. "You're joking, right? You don't know us. You don't even understand what we've been through. Why would you want to help?" Barron's voice remained steady. "I don't need to know everything to help, but I do know this. No one should have to choose between saving their child and keeping their dignity. I'm not helping out of pity. I'm helping because I believe everyone deserves help, especially kids like Timmy, who have their whole future ahead of them." Henry leaned back, his emotions wavering between anger, confusion, and a hint of gratitude. He opened his mouth to speak, but looking at Timmy, whose eyes sparkled with hope at Barron's words, he found himself unable to say anything. Timmy looked at Barron, his voice weak but filled with sincerity. "Thank you, Barron. But I don't want my dad to feel sad. He's already done so much to help me." Barron crouched down and placed his hand over Timmy's. "Your dad is an incredible person. But even incredible people need help sometimes, don't they?" Timmy nodded, his eyes glistening with tears. "So you really are my teammate?" "I really am," Barron replied, a soft smile spreading across his face. "And I won't let you fight alone." Henry remained silent for a moment before raising his hand to cover his face. "I don't know what to say," he muttered, his voice trembling. Barron stood upright, looking at him seriously. "You don't have to say anything. Just stay here with Timmy. I'll take care of the rest." Henry turned to Barron, his eyes red and watery. Perhaps, for the first time in his life, he began to believe that kindness still existed in a place he least expected. The next morning, as the first light of day streamed through the hospital room window, Timmy opened his eyes to see his father sitting beside him. Henry still held his son's hand tightly, his eyes heavy from a sleepless night. But his expression brightened as a nurse entered the room, her radiant smile lighting up the space. "We have good news, Mr. Phillips," the nurse said. "The costs for Timmy's surgery and treatment have been fully covered. An anonymous donor has taken care of everything." Henry froze, unable to believe what he had just heard. "What did you say? Everything has been paid for?" "Yes," the nurse confirmed with a nod. "Timmy's surgery will be scheduled this week." Henry stood still, his emotions a chaotic mix of joy and confusion. He grasped the nurse's hand urgently and asked, "Who is this donor? I need to thank them." The nurse shook her head, her face apologetic. "We're not allowed to disclose their identity. That was their request." Henry stood there for a moment, then looked down at Timmy. The boy smiled, his eyes sparkling with joy. "Daddy, does this mean I'm really going to have the surgery?" "Yes, Timmy," Henry choked out, stroking his son's hair. "We're going to get through this. Someone out there believes you deserve to live." 2 days later, Henry returned to the Brooklyn Community Center, his heart brimming with questions. He saw Barron standing in the corner, helping to organize donated clothes on the shelves. The image of the tall, modest young man working with quiet responsibility made Henry stop in his tracks, emotions swirling inside him. He approached, his gaze sharp but devoid of the bitterness it once held. "It was you, wasn't it?" Henry asked, his voice hoarse with emotion. Barron looked up, meeting Henry's eyes. He didn't answer immediately, only offering a slight, enigmatic smile. "You only need to know that Timmy will get the care he needs," Barron said, his tone calm. Henry stared at Barron, searching for something in his expression. But then, as if convinced by Barron's meaningful silence, he lowered his head, his voice trembling. "Why? You don't know us. Why would you help?" Barron placed the last sweater on the shelf and turned to face Henry. "Because I believe everyone has value," he said, his voice gentle but carrying the weight of a deep conviction. "I can't change everything, but if I can do something, why wouldn't I?" Barron's words echoed through the noisy room, but to Henry they were the only thing he heard. A wave of guilt washed over him. "I was wrong about you," Henry admitted, his voice thick with emotion. "I thought you were just a spoiled rich kid who knew nothing about the real world. But you're different." Barron stepped forward, placing a hand on Henry's shoulder, his gaze sincere. "Sometimes, what we see on the outside doesn't reflect what's inside. I'm also learning to understand life better. Timmy has taught me a lot." Henry looked up, his eyes red and teary. "What has Timmy taught you?" "He taught me that courage isn't just about overcoming fear, but facing it every single day," Barron said, his eyes shining. "Timmy showed me that even the smallest acts of kindness can create significant change for others. Sometimes just listening and caring is enough to make a miracle happen." Henry remained silent, absorbing Barron's words as if they were a profound lesson. He no longer saw the young man before him as a distant and privileged stranger. Barron was someone who truly understood the value of kindness, and Henry couldn't help but feel a deep sense of respect. That evening, Henry returned to the hospital and sat beside his son's bed. Timmy was asleep, his breathing steadier than before. Henry leaned down, kissed his son's forehead, and felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. For the first time in years, he felt a glimmer of hope. Not just because Timmy would receive the treatment he needed, but because he realized that somewhere out there, people were willing to help without expecting anything in return. And the person who brought that hope was a young man he had once misjudged so harshly. Henry vowed to himself, "I won't let this kindness go to waste. I'll do something to spread this goodness, to help others just as he helped me." In a world often overshadowed by selfishness and doubt, Barron Trump's small yet meaningful action reignited hope for a family lost in darkness. Kindness doesn't need grand gestures, and the power of compassion isn't measured by greatness but by hearts that truly care. Timmy was given a chance at life, Henry rediscovered his faith in humanity, and we, as witnesses, are reminded that even the smallest act of kindness can change an entire life. If this story touched your heart, hit subscribe, like and share to spread the message of kindness and empathy to more people. Help us reach our first milestone of 1,000 subscribers, which means a world to us. Together, let's create miracles from simple actions.